Hi, hi, hi. You know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We are back! We are back to story time with Chris. Hi, how's it going? Today has been a good day. I was really tired after work today, like very much exhausted. But it's totally fine. Hi, my friend. It's good to see you. Well, not to actually see you, but thank you for watching. Oh, goodness. Children, if there's one thing that I can impart on you, it is this. Even though you may get older, you don't ever have to forget who you were in your youth as a child. I had a really engaging conversation with a friend of mine earlier today after work. And she said, you know, Chris, like, I don't understand how you can have so much energy. Like, you don't drink coffee, you don't drink energy drinks. You just have, like, this zest for life. And I love how she said that. And I was like, I have that because I will never forget my childlike spirit. I will never forget about that aspect of my life. It wasn't always pretty, but for the vast majority, I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, that I had a very rich childhood, of rich moments, of great accomplishments, of people coming in and out of my life that brought me positivity and taught me lessons. So, I just want to say that I'm grateful that I still have that zest for life, that je ne sais quoi for life. And I think it's important that we hold on to that. I don't care how old or sophisticated you may think you are. There is nothing more powerful than embracing the essence of what makes you who you are. And the part of that is your youth, your childhood, your teenage years. No matter if it was the good, the bad, the ugly, embracing those things gives you so much strength. Just wanted to share that. We're going to switch up the music just a tad because I was in the zone, in journaling mode, building up ideas. Journaling is important when you get older, kids. Journaling definitely helps you filter out your ideas and really hone in on what you're trying to accomplish. Whether it's a project, whether it's a story you want to create, it's definitely helpful. Definitely. Ooh, yes. Okay.
Looking into sexual
What is... Okay, it's a commercial. I do not buy commercials. Wish we didn't have them, but of course we need commercials in order to advertise things and bring attention to people's things, but it happens. It happens. I'm not a fan of commercials. I just really would do without them personally. Oh, perfect. And of course, I do not own the music that you are listening to in the background. And we are back with a series of unfortunate events. Like I said, and I will make an event for this on Sunday evening and Monday evening after I'm done passing out candy for trick-or-treating. There will be a special presentation of Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree. I will give time specific to when that will happen, so do not worry. I will make sure to post it, trust me. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and begin. I don't care what anybody says. Physical books. I mean, I have digital books because there are books that are out of print, unfortunately. But there is nothing that will ever beat a physical book. Like, just that sound of moving through pages is so awesome. Because I'm a nerd and I love it. Alright. Chapter 5. Unless you've been very, very lucky, you've undoubtedly experienced events in your life that have made you cry. So unless you've been very, very lucky, you know that a good long session of weeping can often make you feel better, even if the circumstances have not changed one bit. So it was with the Baudelaire orphans. Having cried all night, they rose the next morning feeling as if a weight were off their shoulders. The children knew, of course, that they were still in a terrible situation, but they thought they might do something to make it better. The morning's note from Count Olaf ordered them to chop firewood in the backyard, and as Violet and Klaus swung the axe down over each log to break it into smaller pieces, they discussed possible plans of action, while Sunny chewed meditatively on a small piece of wood. "Clearly," Klaus said, fingering the ugly bruise where Olaf had struck him, "we cannot stay here any longer. I would rather take my chances on the streets than live in this terrible place." "But who knows what misfortunes would befall us on the streets?" Violet pointed out. "At least here we have a roof over our heads." "I wish our parents' money could be used now instead of when you come of age," Klaus said. "We could buy a castle and live in it with armed guards patrolling the outside to keep out Count Olaf and his troop." "And I could have a large inventing studio," Violet said wistfully. She swung the axe down and split a log neatly in two, filled with gears and pulleys and wires and an elaborate computer system. "And I could have a large library," Klaus said, "as comfortable as Justice Strauss's, but more enormous." "Gibbo!" Sunny shrieked, which appeared to mean, "and I could have lots of things to bite." "But in the meantime," Violet said, "we have to do something about our predicament." "Perhaps Justice Strauss could adopt us," Klaus said. "She said we were always welcome in her home." "But she meant for a visit, or to use her library," Violet pointed out. "She didn't mean to live." "Perhaps if we explained our situation to her, she would agree to adopt us," Klaus said hopefully. But when Violet looked at him, she saw that he knew that it was of no use. Adoption is an enormous decision and not likely to happen impulsively. I'm sure you, in your life, have occasionally wished to be raised by different people than the ones who are raising you, but knew in your heart that the chances of this were very slim. "I think we should go see Mr. Poe," Violet said. "He told us when he dropped us here that we could contact him at the bank if we had any questions." "We don't really have a question," Klaus said. "We have a complaint." He was thinking of Mr. Poe walking toward them at Briny Beach with his terrible message. Even though the fire was, of course, not Mr. Poe's fault, Klaus was reluctant to see Mr. Poe because he was afraid of getting more bad news. "I can't think of anyone else to contact," Violet said. "Mr. Poe is in charge of our affairs, and I'm sure if he knew how horrid Count Olaf is, he would take us right out of here." Klaus pictured Mr. Poe arriving in his car and putting the Baudelaire orphans inside to go somewhere else and felt a stirring of hope. Anywhere would be better than here. "Okay," he said, "let's get this firewood all chopped up and we'll go to the bank." Invigorated by their plan, the Baudelaire orphans swung their axes at an amazing speed, and soon enough they were done chopping firewood and ready to go to the bank. They remembered Count Olaf saying he had a map of the city, and they looked thoroughly for it, but they couldn't find any trace of a map. Decided it must be in the tower where they were forbidden to go. So without directions of any sort, the Baudelaire children set off for the city's banking district in hopes of finding Mr. Poe. After walking through the meat district, the flower district, and the sculpture district, the three children arrived at the banking district, pausing to take a refreshing sip of water at the fountain of Victoria's finance. The banking district consisted of several wide streets with large marble buildings on each side of them, all banks. They were first to Trustworthy Bank, then to Faithful Savings and Loan, and then to Subservient Financial Services, each time inquiring for Mr. Poe. Finally, a receptionist at Subservient said she knew that Mr. Poe worked down the street at Mortuary Money Management. Say that 3 times fast. The building was square and rather plain-looking, though once inside, the 3 orphans were intimidated by the hustle and bustle of the people as they raced around the large, echoey room. Finally, they asked a uniformed guard whether they had arrived at the right place to speak to Mr. Poe, and he led them into a large office with many file cabinets and no windows. "Well, hello," said Mr. Poe in a puzzled tone of voice. He was sitting at a desk covered in typed papers that looked important and boring. Surrounding a small framed photograph of his wife and 2 beastly sons were 3 telephones with flashing lights. "Please, come in." "Thank you," said Klaus, shaking Mr. Poe's hand. The Baudelaire youngster sat down in 3 large and comfortable chairs. Mr. Poe opened his mouth to speak, but had to cough into a handkerchief before he could begin.
I'm very busy today, he said finally, so I don't have much time to chat. Next time you should call ahead of time when you plan on being in the neighborhood, and I will put some time aside to take you to lunch.
That would be very pleasant, Violet said. And we're sorry we didn't contact you before we stopped by. But we find ourselves in an urgent situation.
Count Olaf is a madman, Klaus said, getting right to the point. We cannot stay with him.
He struck Klaus across the face. See his bruise? Violet said, but just as she said it, one of the telephones rang in a loud, unpleasant wail.
Excuse me, Mr. Poe said, and picked up the phone.
Poe here, he said into the receiver.
What? Yes. 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 No.
Yes. Thank you. He hung up the phone and looked at the Baudelaires as if he had forgotten they were there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Poe said. What were we talking about? Oh, yes, Count Olaf. I'm sorry you don't have a good first impression of him.
He has only provided us with one bed, Klaus said. He makes us do a great many difficult chores.
He drinks too much wine. Excuse me, Mr. Poe said as another telephone rang.
Poe here, he said.
7, 7, 7, 7, 6.5, 7. You're welcome.
And he hung up the phone and quickly wrote down something on one of his papers, then looked at the children.
I'm sorry, he said. What were you saying about Count Olaf? Making you do chores didn't sound too bad?
He calls us orphans. He has terrible friends. He's always asking us about our money.
Poco!
This was from Sonny. Mr. Poe put up his hands to indicate he had heard enough.
Children, he said. You must give yourselves time to adjust to your new home. You've only been there a few days.
We've been there long enough to know Count Olaf is a bad man. Poe sighed and looked at each of the three children. His face was kind, but it didn't look like he really believed what the Baudelaire orphans were saying.
Are you familiar with the Latin term in loco parentis? He asked.
Violet and Sonny looked at Klaus, the biggest reader of the three. He was most likely to know vocabulary words and foreign phrases. Something about trains? He asked. Maybe Mr. Poe was going to take them by train to another relative. Mr. Poe shook his head.
In loco parentis means acting in the role of parent, he said. It is a legal term and it applies to Count Olaf. Now that you are in his care, the Count may raise you using any methods he sees fit. I'm sorry if your parents did not make you do any household chores, or if you never saw them drink any wine, or if you like their friends better than Count Olaf's friends, but these are things that you must get used to, as Count Olaf is acting in loco parentis. Understand?
He struck my brother, Violet said. Look at his face. As Violet spoke, Mr. Poe reached into his pocket for his handkerchief and, covering his mouth, coughed many, many times into it. He coughed so loudly that Violet could not be certain he had heard her.
Whatever Count Olaf has done, Mr. Poe said, glancing down at one of his papers and circling a number, he has acted in loco parentis, and there's nothing I can do about it. Your money will be well protected by myself and by the bank, but Count Olaf's parenting techniques are his own business. Now I hate to usher you out post-haste, but I have very many and much work to do.
The children just sat there, stunned. Mr. Poe looked up and cleared his throat.
Post-haste, he said, means
you'll do nothing to help us, Violet finished for him. She was shaking with anger and frustration as one of the phones began ringing. She stood up and walked out of the room, followed by Klaus, who was carrying Sonny. They stalked out of the bank and stood on the street, not knowing what to do next. What shall we do next? Klaus asked sadly. Violet stared up at the sky. She wished she could invent something that could take them out of there. "It's getting pretty late," she said. "We might as well go back and think of something else tomorrow. Perhaps we can stop by and see Justice Strauss." "But you said she wouldn't help us," Klaus said. "Not for help," Violet said. "For books. It is very useful, when one is young, to learn the difference between literally and figuratively. If something happens literally, it actually happens. If something happens figuratively, it feels like it's happening. If you are literally jumping for joy, for instance, it means you are leaping in the air because you are very happy. But if you are figuratively jumping for joy, it means you are so happy that you could jump for joy, but are saving your energy for other matters. Remember that. The Baudelaire orphans walked back to Count Olaf's neighborhood and stopped at the home of Justice Strauss, who welcomed them inside and let them choose books from the library. Violet chose several about mechanical inventions, Klaus chose several about wolves, and Sunny found a book with many pictures of teeth inside. They then went to their room and crowded together on one bed, reading intently and happily. Figuratively, they escaped from Count Olaf and their miserable existence. They did not literally escape, because they were still in his house and vulnerable to Olaf's evil loco parentis ways. Excuse me. But by immersing themselves in their favorite reading topics, they felt far away from their predicament, as if they had escaped. In the situation of the orphans, figuratively escaping was not enough, of course, but at the end of a tiring and hopeless day, it would have to do. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny read their books, and in the back of their minds hoped that soon their figurative escape would eventually turn into a real one. And that is where we will end for tonight. Now hold on one second, because I want to show something really, really quickly. Hold on one second. Oh, my legs. All right. Bah. Okay, so I wanted to pause for a quick second because I wanted to show you all this. This is The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. It's one of my favorite books. Actually, to be honest, Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite authors of all time. One of, not the, but one of. One, because he is a Midwestern writer. If I'm not mistaken, a good majority of his books are set in Ohio. Ohio's just a great setting for fantasy, mysteries, sci-fi, the Midwest in general. So, like, when I say the Midwest, that's Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Kansas. We'll throw in Kentucky and West Virginia, and Michigan is up there. Pennsylvania. Yeah, I would just go ahead and call that the Midwest. Kansas is definitely with the Midwest. Reasons that I'll explain at another time. But this is an amazing story that really does, in my opinion, a good job of extrapolating different cultures and their versions of Halloween and what the trueness of spirit of Halloween is. So, I will see you all on Sunday evening. I'm going to do my best to get on here by 7:30. That will be on Facebook, by the way. So, if you want to join in on that, I wish there was a way I could just go live on both platforms. I don't know how to do that. If somebody does know how to do that, please message me privately of how to do that. But, yes, please, come, join me. It's going to be a good time. I love you all. I'll see you next time, okay? Bye-bye now.